everyone, Breanne from Pixite. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be coloring some fur today. We've had some requests on how to get realistic fur texture. So that's what I'm going to be touching base on today. That's going to be the main focus. I have colored a couple other animals. This is from the Grayscale Wildlife book. That's why I have this pulled up. I want you to be able to color along or to know where to get the piece if you want to color it later. It's fairly new. You should see it in the new book section. So I'm going to color this fox, and I'm going to do him a very orangey brown type color, and I'm going to keep the shades very true from what I see. I actually have a lot of foxes living around my area, so I see them quite regularly. I don't feel the need that I need a reference photo for this because I see them so often. And one thing I'm going to touch base on with grayscale is to really pay attention to where your darkest and lightest shades are when you're coloring fur. I just want to touch base on this before we get started. So where you see the darker areas is where you should emphasize your darker colors and shading. So keep that in mind when you're coloring your piece. Same with the lighter areas. That's where your lighter fur should be, and that's where your highlights should be. If you go against these, I mean, you can. If you're confident, sure, go for it. But the best results I find with all the grayscales that I've colored, which I've colored, oh, I don't even know, is to go with these shading cues. It will help you along, and your piece won't look so distraught at the end. Like when you're fighting the natural details of the piece, it makes it harder for you to get that realistic edge to your piece. That being said, let's get started. I want to get just some background colors out of the way first, and then we'll move on to the fox. So I'm going to do some kind of forest background back there. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but I'm just going to get the color in. So I'm going to grab my fade. It's already on fade. And I'm just going to use the green palette from the Pigment selection. I'm just going to get some greens in here. I'm going to kind of get them varied a little bit. I want decreasing shades of color, so I have like a lighter green and then the darker. Probably want it to be a little bit darker under this fox's feet. Okay. Then we can use bloom. No, I don't like that. Just trying to get this color happening where I want it to be happening. That's all I'm doing right now. I can go back and touch up the background after. I don't know if I want to do the background first. I really just want to get to the fur, because it's gonna take a while to do the fur. I'm almost positive. I colored the wolf for the cover of this book, and it took me quite a while to do. So I just wanna get to the fur, and then if I have time, I'll do a background, but if not, at least I got something in there. Okay. So let's go to the airbrush. Now I'm going to pick the darkest shade of the color that I want to use for the fox first, and I'm going to color in the full piece with the airbrush tool. You can use the technical pen. I just like the airbrush tool because it naturally blends in with other colors and you don't get any harsh, sharp lines when you're using it. So in this case, I might want to grab a brown really quick, and I want like almost a red brown. So that's what that is to me right here. It's hard to tell on camera. I notice when I watch my tutorials back when I'm attending premieres and whatnot, which this is a premiere, I notice that the colors look a little bit different on screen than they do right in front of me. So I hope that you can get my drift most of the way, and you can see that this is kind of a reddish brown. I'm looking at my screen here, and yeah, you can definitely somewhat see that. So I'm gonna go against everything. Remember where your highlights are. Remember where everything is. I just went out of lens. I want really clean edges. I do not want mucky edges, so to speak. So all you're going to do is pick this darker under base color. The reason why you want to go dark is because you can peel away layers when you put down a darker color. If you put down a lighter color and you color, let's say I colored it the lightest color that I was going to use, it's going to be a lot harder to get natural looking shades in your piece. So you always want to pick it doesn't actually have to be the darkest shade that you're going to use, but it should be it should be a little bit darker. This isn't, I can tell by laying this down that I'm going to be putting darker shades in this piece than what this is, but this is my overall base color that I've chosen. So when I go to use and add my other colors, this color is going to be the blended piece. It's going to be the one cohesive color through the whole piece. And you'll notice it some spots more than others. It's important to kind of think of your, I keep on hitting the eraser. It's important to think of your piece in layers. So when you're coloring a piece, think about how many layers it's going to take to get that effect. So this would be a layer right here. Me just filling in this color. And it's okay if it's just really rounded to start with. It doesn't need to have the fur edges right now, because we're gonna be adding lots of strokes later. I just want this base color in, and then we can go from there. Always good to, when you're coloring grayscales, you get a lot of practice with precision because there's no automatic filling, right? You gotta watch your edges, you gotta plan your pieces, and honestly, you can get really great by coloring line art, but there's just something about having to color everything individually on your own that just brings your skill level to a whole new level. It's not something that you can rush either. It takes time. That's why I didn't want, like normally I would do a very intricate background, and I still might, but I just really wanted the fur to be covered in this video because the background could take me 45 minutes just to do the background. And that parrot that was in that you see when I was coming into this book, I did a tutorial on a very cool background for that parrot. And the background that I was going to do for this wolf was quite similar. I still might do, we'll see how long this takes. Not that I'm on any time constraints or anything. I just like to keep the videos kind of focused. I'm trying to keep them more focused on a subject or topic. Some of them anyway. This one in particular, I'm definitely focusing on the fur aspects. So as you can see, I'm almost done filling in the base color that I chose for this fox's fur. I'm not worried about the eyes, I'm not worried about the nose. Those are all my last details that I do on grayscales, is highlighting eyes, and all the little details are always last. Think of it as a big circle. You do your biggest circle first, and then you work your way inwards to the smaller stuff in the middle. You could almost think of it as an onion. Onion has layers, right? You peel off the largest first and you work your way to the inner part of the onion. Okay, so right now it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a big reddish brown fox. Okay, that's fine. Now I'm going to deepen up that red. And even though this part is a little bit dark, I just want to go over some areas. I'm going to go over it a little bit with the darker edge of that. Just want to define it a bit. I'm going to get a little bit of a widespread happening. Just increased my brush size a little bit. I'm not going crazy with it. I just want to get in. I'm going all over the areas where there's lots of sketchy details. Like thickly or thickened sketched areas is where I'm using that. Okay. So now I'm going to go back. Could probably be going back and forth from oranges to browns. So in this case, I'm gonna use this orange, but I'm gonna keep it. I don't wanna go super light just yet. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing it in layers. So I'm gonna bring down my brush size to about 1 or 2 is usually a safe bet. I'm gonna leave my opacity all the way up. Yeah, I'll leave it at 2. And then all these lighter areas, you just start, I think actually even 1 to start. You're just gonna start doing strokes. And this can be very time consuming, so you all know. It's the only way to get realistic looking fur is to put the time in and do those strokes. If you want, you can just go in really quickly, and if, like, let's say I just wanted those colors in and just, you can do that, but usually I do that after to add extra emphasis or extra highlights to areas. But to start out, I do these strokes. And then you get this fur that's just gonna keep on happening in layers, and it's gonna build up, and it's gonna start looking really beautiful. It takes a while, like I just said. So if you all wanna bear with me, you will get a really beautiful fox at the end of this video, I can promise you that. Or hopefully we'll get a beautiful fox. I'm sure we will, as I've done this quite a few times, but let's see what we can come up with here. So it's just, I'm going in the lighter areas, the areas that don't have heavily sketched details. And I'm adding strokes in the direction that the fur is going. How do you know which way the fur is going in these light areas? Go with the dark sketched areas. And it's all kind of going this way, so that's the way that I'm making my stroke. You want to go with the grain, not against the grain. And it's already starting to look like the fox has fur, and we've only done the back end. So you're just going to want to keep on going along with that. Now this is just one color. There is going to be quite a few different colors for this fox. I'm not sure what they are. I'm winging it, so to speak. So what I'm doing is doing a layer, excuse me, and then I'm going to pick another color. And sometimes I move around my brush size and my opacity, but for the first layer, it's usually very small strokes of full opacity fur. And then as I go, sometimes the brush size gets bigger, the opacity gets lower. It just depends on how it's going, how it's turning out. And don't be shy, you can still get strokes in those heavily shaded areas. It's going to look natural by doing that. And don't worry if you go out of the lines, as long as you're making proper strokes, it's just gonna look like fur coming out. It actually looks more natural. So it doesn't have to be perfect. If you go out of the lines a little bit, absolutely fine. Just make sure you're always going in the direction that the fur should be going. See, that isn't really, hold on here. I think the fur should be coming in more of an angle at this point. And straight down. Not that it matters this early in the game for it to be super perfect, but I just like to set it up so when I'm going back over it, I can see what I did and what way it should be going. So a little bit less confusing when you do it right the first time. And that's why I'm a little bit cautious about precision. It's because it sets it up as a guide for your next layers as well, right? So you want that guide. This is kind of a tricky one. Fur is kind of going every which way here. And as you do these layers of fur, you'll really just start to see the animal come to life. And if you do larger strokes under your bigger strokes, like see I have, and if you press even a little bit stronger, you'll get more texture and color. Sometimes I go over my strokes with the same color, believe it or not, and I just press harder. So you get the lighter fur underneath, and then you get the chunkier fur on top. Maybe what I'll do is, this video takes long, which I think it might. I'll do the background, but maybe in a separate video. We'll see. Usually I always do my background first in grayscales because I don't like having to go around my colored piece when you put so much work into it, and you might ruin it, or you know what I mean, have to touch it up because you go into it with the other colors from the background. But I got my base color back there, so that helps a lot. And then I can go from there. So I just got a little bit more fur to outline here. I'm just using and zooming in and out and going in the direction that's most comfortable. That's another thing. So I always turn my canvas to what's the most fluid way for me to make my strokes in the direction that I need to go. As you can see, I just switched twice from one area to the other because I want my strokes not to be choppy or to look inconsistent. So if you move around your canvas, it can really help you make those strokes the way that you want them. Do a little bit on the ears. It's okay if fur comes out, right? Because fur isn't all neat and tidy. It comes out everywhere, and I might do just a little bit on the nose, but the nose is probably going to be an entity of its own. This fox is definitely going to have some kind of markings. Okay, so first layer pretty much done. You can go back, and I'm going to thicken maybe just the tops where it's the lightest, where we had that really light, there's basically like no shading or texture up here, so I'll thicken it up a bit. The top. Maybe on the feet in a couple places. So I just go back over what I did And I'm pressing a bit harder now to get in those stronger lines. I'm going in the lightest areas, not in the parts that were heavily shaded doing this, just the lighter areas. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now we need to grab an even lighter color. We'll probably do this in a couple of layers. I'm wondering if I can use that one. Is that light enough? Looks too much. Looks too much like the color underneath. That's too light. Let's go scroll through here. What about this? That might actually work. Okay, so I'm gonna use this orangey color from Vintage Sweater. And I'm gonna leave, oh, it's pouring here. Sorry if you hear that in the background. We've had storms the last couple of days and it is pouring outside right now. So I'm gonna leave the opacity and everything the same. All I'm gonna do is press harder and then my spread will get bigger. So I want this light color over top of the fur that I already colored, but you don't have to go over every area. That's the trick, is to know where your next colors are needed and where they aren't. It's part of the trick to getting realistic fur. Made a mark here. That happens a lot when I'm moving around my canvas. It's easily fixable. Can be a pain in the butt when you miss it and then you have to go back and fix it. Fix this really quick. Like I said, it can be a pain. And then that happens when you flip your canvas. Sometimes you drag your finger across. So all these highlighted areas that were light, I'm gonna go in with lighter colors and layer and add highlights. So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. And I was also just fixing my runaway mark I made with my finger. See, there's another mark. I'm really bad for doing that because I'm constantly rotating my canvas. It might not take as long as I thought it would, you know, which is fine. Even if it does take long, it's not a big deal. I love showing it to you. I just like to demonstrate in some amount of time what can be done. So see, now I'm going back around with the highlights and you're really starting to see the fox come to life with these highlights now. And if you feel you need to adjust your brush, don't be shy to do that. Now I'm kind of adding a little bit more of a curl to my strokes because that's kind of how the fur is there. And then I'm going to do the same for the belly. Also, if you're watching any of the videos and there's something that you would like to see, if there's something that you're having trouble with or just want to see how someone else does it or anything like that, comment on any of Pigment's videos, and don't be shy to make a request. It doesn't have to be this video. It could be any video that you're watching and something comes to mind. We'd love to get to it for you, to help you out. We love hearing from you guys. So you can really see him coming, or her, him or her, coming to life. And I'm just gonna add some of those lighter strokes through the shaded area now, just to blend it, just to get a little bit of a blended look. If you follow the method, it's actually quite stress relieving doing these lines and these strokes and these layers. It's very relaxing. And you can do a couple, like I'm just going through the shaded area, so I have some blending happening. The illustrator already gave this fox a black tip tail, so I don't have to worry about doing that. Not that they all have black tip tails, which they don't, but a lot of them do, surprisingly. So you can see that to get that fur look, it does take quite a few layers of different colors, right? It doesn't just come super easy. It does take a little bit of work. But it's very easy, soothing, calming work to do. So shouldn't be too hard for anyone to do. It's just strokes. I'm just adding a little bit of hair to the ears now. A little bit more than I did the last pass through. All right, so there is another pass with another color. So you see how our base color always stays with us, and even though we lose a lot of it, it still is important to have because it serves for that underneath that makes everything blend and look cohesive. So now we're gonna grab an even lighter color. And I can probably use the same color and just lighten it up. It's almost like a creamy orange. So with this creamy orange, I'm gonna bring up my opacity or my brush size a bit here. And I'm gonna make wider strokes, not as many strokes, wider strokes. And definitely not as many. But you wanna make the strokes that you do put in impactful. And it's almost like a white, or it looks white when you're putting it in, but it's not. I'm definitely going to want to use this color around the eyes and the nose. And then I want to blend it out a little bit. So grab the color underneath, and you're just going to want to blend out right around the eye just a bit. You make it even darker and just kind of get the eye standing out a little bit more. And around the nose. Go with that natural shading that's there and just help blend it through a little bit. And I press very gently when I blend. I'm not pressing full force at all. You don't need to. You can figure out what colors you want for your markings and kind of get those going. Don't be afraid to mix up your colors and do dark with light and just play with it until you get that nice balance that you're going for. So I'm mixing it up and I'm blending at the same time with a wider spread. I'm using a wide spread and I'm blending my strokes that I put in. So they don't look so strokey and streamlined, but you still get the idea of fur. I'm just going around the eye. Widespread, you don't want to press hard because then you'll lose everything that's underneath. You just want to press nice and gently and get a nice mix happening. A nice blend of what you've done. it's nice because you still see the fur strokes. That's the trick. You want to keep those fur strokes and just add in your highlights and get that look you were going for. And little details like just, you know, adding some highlight to the chin so you can see where it's defined. Little things like that really do make a difference. So like right here, just to define that area, right? So it brings your eye there so you see that, okay, that is the lip line. You can see clearly that's where the fox's mouth is. It does take practice for this part because this part is all about having a little bit of finesse, if I can use that term. And all I mean by finesse is that you can't press too hard. It's a blending. If anything's hard about fur, it's just not hard. It's just maybe getting used to is blending and not pressing hard and having that subtle touch. You can go out of bounds a little bit when you're doing fur if you want to get strokes kind of coming out from the ears, or you want it to look a little bit more furry like I'm doing right now. You totally can do that. Just looking him over here, seeing what else needs to be done. Highlighting areas is also really important. So just getting some highlighted areas in, like places that are kind of hidden, but you do want to stand out somewhat. It is good to define those areas, like the snout, for instance, was all dark. So if I do want it to stand out, you just go in with a lighter color and define it, right? So you can see clearly that that is the fox's snout. Now, I am going to need to get the white here in a second. I'm just going back in and adding a little bit more strokes of darker fur where I think I might have taken just a bit too much away, but I really want that white to stand out, so I'm just adding some more strokes to kind of blend it all. And get the fur kind of looking more choppy than all straight going down on the tail as well. I found it was looking very monoline there for a second. You can also do that too. You can always go in and add darker in where you think there should be a little bit more darker. There's always room to add improvement or fix stuff that you just think doesn't look right. So it is important to step back and kind of look at your piece and see if it's going exactly how you want it to. Getting realistic fur does take a little bit of analytical time. So still just blending and trying to get this balance working, right? That's all I'm doing, blending, blending, blending. Okay, I was talking about that white, so I would like to get white. White I usually use at the very end. I'm not sure if we're at the very end right now, but I'm just gonna kind of show you what I do to get these really kind of, you wanna go down and you wanna have really sharp white highlights. And the reason why I do them in white, not all the time, depends on your light source. This is gonna be more of a forest type view, is because it adds a nice crisp highlight. You'll see the fur really pop. And I'm gonna do that to the tail as well. And it's mostly around the edges and coming out from the fur itself. You make a mistake, just hit that back button. That's what it's there for. And you see how it kind of gives you the illusion of hair cascading in behind? It kind of gives that like look like the light is illuminating the hair in behind the animal. I keep it towards the edge of the fur line everywhere. And I'm on a very, I think I'm on 1. Yeah, I'm on 1. Or was I on 0? No, I'm on 1. And you keep it close to the edge of the fur line wherever you put it. You can elaborate on it some places where you think there might be a little bit more white detailing. And you're not gonna want super, I think I actually was on 0. You're gonna want not thick lines. You're gonna want lots of just little lines. If you hear tapping, I do apologize. It's kind of unavoidable. I'm a loud tapper, and even with a microphone and tried a million things to get rid of that tapping, it just is going to make this video a little bit more real for you. Same noises you would hear if you were coloring at home. So as you can see, it's really bringing the fur to life. the highlights are really important when you're doing fur. And if you think that you've added too much anywhere or it needs to be touched up, just go over it with a darker color and just angle it in. But the white highlights are a really important part, I find, of getting that fur look. Not all the time, but I just find it really makes it pop. But you can't just do the white, you have to do the other steps, the other layers, or it doesn't work. So it definitely is a lot of strokes. Pretty much what the technique I use for making fur is all strokes. Do some white strokes where the whiskers should be. Where the inside of the ear hair kind of is. I want the eyes to stand out more, so I'm doing some white stroke lines there. I'm thinking of the markings that a fox has, right? And it just so happens, like I mentioned, that we see a lot of them out this way. So I don't feel the need to look at a reference photo, which I do like when I did the parrot. I don't see parrots every day, so I have seen them obviously, but it's not an everyday occurrence. So when your brain gets a little foggy that way, don't be shy to check it out. All this is just blending and getting those highlights in there. That's all this is right now. Getting the highlights in there and so now I'm using a little bit of a wider spread and I'm going over where I put those white highlights, some of them, and I'm gently adding a little extra white. I can't tell you how gentle I'm pressing. I'm barely touching the screen. You do not want to ruin all that work that you just did. Now, I'm gonna go back and get like a cream color. And I'm just going to figure out what color I want my eyes to be, because I'm honestly not sure. Just keep in mind when you're layering your detail that you don't want to lose too much of what you did underneath. In certain areas, it might call for losing a little bit of that detail, but just remember that you're gonna want all that detail to be incorporated to get that look you were going for in the first place. Right there, I blended some of my my lines out, and it's only because I feel like this part should be heavily shaded, because I always review my work when I'm done. So I'm just going over now and making sure that I have everything where I want it. Now, as for the eye color, honestly, I can't even think. I know that they do, I might just do blue eyes. It's not a huge area. Maybe just something to make him stand out a bit. That's one thing I can't quite remember, is what color their eyes are, but I do remember seeing a fox at our door and he had 2 different colored eyes, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, I'm just gonna do blue, and then also make sure that you highlight the white part of the eye, because it shows that there's reflection, and you can also add in more reflection if you want. It's not a huge area to do that here, so you might just want to keep it simple. So we're pretty much almost at the end of this fur here. How long did it take? It took about an hour. That's what I was figuring, it'd take about an hour. That's why I didn't do the background. So just gonna go over and add in some last minute strokes. And you can always modify this, like if you look at it later and you go, oh yeah, and I mean, it's a work in progress getting kind of familiar with doing this technique, because there's no real one way to do it. What I told you is basically guidelines, but look, I'm going in and adding dark after I did light. So there definitely is different ways of achieving this look. I was just showing you how I do it, but it pretty much all has to be in some kind of stroke formation. And then sometimes I'll go in and just add like a random big white highlight places just to show like kind of glistening fur. The flyaway fur stuff really helps make it look realistic as well, and shading. So if you notice any places are off, don't be afraid to go back in with extra shading on a wider spread. And layering highlights like I'm doing right now, you see I went in with a lighter color, then I did white, and it's a very finesse-like battle to kind of know how strong you want your highlights to be. But the more you do it, the more familiar you get with it. and the more it just comes natural, if that makes sense. And you don't have to think about it so much because you've done it, and you just kind of get it after a while. Just a little spot here that we'll take care of. Just fixing up any little blemishes I might have made over here. And it actually makes for a cool background when you fix things sometimes. I actually think the background looks nice with it. I mean, just being plain. I might just do a couple things to tweak it here. I'm just finishing up these last minute details with this fox. Little things that you notice can really make a difference in the overall appearance of your picture, and just having like random stray hairs come out sometimes makes a difference. Having these little hairs pop out places that, you know, can really bring life to the animal. I find when you use the white, it really does define the fur in the end, and makes certain parts of your piece stand out. Just a neat little thing. I don't know if I probably mentioned it before, but when you're using white and you need black, you don't have to go find a black. Just zip it to the other end and then you got black. Same vice versa if you're using black and you need white. You can just zip it to the end and then you got the opposite end of the spectrum, which would be black or white, right? And you can get different shades of grays in the middle. So you could pretty much get all your shades of gray, your black, your white. Okay, so I'm liking it, I'm liking it. Almost forgot about a very important part, which is the nose. And I want to have highlights on the nose. And I want to shade a little bit around the face as well. I could honestly sometimes keep going on and on and on because I always notice more things that I can do to add structure and depth to the piece. So sometimes I have to stop myself and go, okay, that's enough. But honestly, there's always something I find that can be done. And then if you want, you can zoom in at these little piddly hairs in here, and you can add white details here in the lighter hairs where it's dark. And even that adds something to the piece. So that's what I'm going to go in and do now, is I'm going to go to these lighter areas with a very small brush size. I believe I'm on 1. And I'm just going to fill in these lighter strokes. So instead of the hair just looking flat and black in those shaded areas, you'll see almost a shine. And you can do the same for the hind legs. Add a little bit of fur. And to the tail. So as you can see, I've been using white for quite a while now to finish off my piece. And I'm using just straight up white. Get those hairs, get that light illuminating in the background. I might do a part 2 and do a background for this fox, but honestly, he looks quite beautiful and I'm quite satisfied with the way that this turned out. I hate over predicting and saying something's gonna look good because I have falters and sometimes stuff doesn't turn out, but I was pretty confident because I've been working on fur a lot. So I was a little bit confident about this, hence why I was doing a tutorial. It's always nice to feel like you've learned something and that you can share it with people, and then they learn it and then you can share it with people that need help with it. And it's this big circle and we just keep all teaching each other and helping each other, and it's just such a nice thing. So yeah, I was right to probably stick away from doing any kind of intricate background, and not because I don't want to. I just think an hour and over an hour is a pretty good chunk of time for me to sit here and show you, and I hope that this helps. I really, really hope that this helped. So just last minute highlights through the whole fox. And if you want to add a little bit more depth to the animal, you can just add a little bit of shading under the paws. You don't have to. When I do a simple background, I just like to add a little bit more shading to certain things. I just find it. And maybe I'll come back to it for but we'll see. For now, I'll just do this. You want to make a little bit more depth, you just can layer colors. If you're going to do a simple background and you want your animal to stand out, just by making almost like a vignette around the edges of your picture will add depth to it. And then shading underneath the paws. Just adds a little bit more structure to the photo than I'm just sitting in the middle of a blank canvas. I like to add little details at least. I just find it's nice to at least have those in there. because it does make the picture a little bit more visually interesting, right? Just those little shading areas. Very simple, yet effective. And then if you want to get a little bit more of a bright green up here, you could do that too. Add a little bit more of that bright green. Of course, it's completely not necessary. I'm just going ahead and adding another kind of vignette corner over here. And if you really wanted to do something cool, you could go around the fox. And add just a little bit of lighting around him. In no way is that necessary. I'm just kind of having fun trying to make a somewhat interesting background. You could also do kind of light effect here. I honestly am digging this painterly look right now. I find it looks very painterly in the background. I'm pretty pleased with it because I didn't plan on it. I have a really hard time leaving things incomplete, so I'm gonna leave it with some sort of background. I'm not just gonna leave it. And I'm impressed with just the simple painterly background. And then I'm just going to go where I highlighted. I'm just gonna add some more quick fur here. Because I feel like I lost a little bit of it with that. Last minute touch-ups. think I'm almost done here. Starting to get a little reckless with my strokes, so I should probably call it a day. I really, really, really hope that this tutorial was helpful and that you like this final result and that you can translate this into your own style for your own work and pass it along to anyone else who needs help, or refer them to this video if you think it's worth doing so, which I hope that you do, because this was a lot of fun for me today. And I love helping whatever way I can. I'm just using airbrush for kind of a painterly mixed background type look here. Okay guys, I'm gonna leave it there before I get too picky, because I could pick at this guy all day. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Breanne from Pixite. And again, I do hope this was helpful. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.